Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. This is another episode of the Engine Room podcast brought to you by tokenmetrics.com. We are here to help you make money in crypto. My name is Dylan Love. I'm joined as always by Bill Noble and Jacob Koch Gallup. Guys, we got a bunch of news stories to talk about, but I actually want to begin this podcast by talking about something that happened 8 years ago. There is an 8-year-old Wired article making the rounds on the internet today from May 2013. And it's an article in which a Wired writer describes the experience of setting up a Butterfly Labs Bitcoin miner in the Wired office. Remember Butterfly Labs? At the time, Bitcoin was trading around $200, $220, and you could successfully mine it yourself if you had the right hardware. And the article actually is quite singing the praises of how well this thing works. They successfully mined about 13 Bitcoin over the course of this little experiment. But there's an amazing kicker at the end of the article that can't be sitting well with anybody involved in this project at the time, because it just describes the experience of mining, yay, money, Bitcoin does this, Bitcoin does that. Then there's this weird left turn at the very last paragraph of the article. I want to read it. The world's most popular digital currency really is nothing more than an abstraction. So we're destroying the private key used by our Bitcoin wallet. That leaves our growing pile of Bitcoin lucre locked away in a digital vault for all eternity, or at least until someone cracks the SHA-256 encryption that secures it. Wired intentionally locked up and threw away the key to 13 Bitcoin that's now worth more than $500,000 today. And if I know anything about the way writers are paid, I'm sure that writer has some regrets about his decisions. Guys, let's pick this one apart. I think there's a number of angles on this. First of all, if the narrative then becomes, hey, we got to get access to that crypto. Bill, you were talking about an Austin-based company called Unchained that might be able to do that.
Yes, that was the first thing I thought of. If anybody can help you find your Bitcoin that you know where it is, but you can't get to it, it would be Unchained Capital in Austin, Texas. Now, if I think about what they did and why they did it, sounds a little bit like somebody was watching a little bit too much sci-fi shows or sci-fi movies. They figured that Bitcoin would be the currency of the future, like as in, a future where they'd have no problem breaking the encryption code. Little did they know the future was 7 or 8 years later.
Yeah, with quite a bit of runway left to go, I would argue.
Yes, right. So they probably figured aliens would discover it in the year 3000, and that turned out not to be the case.
Yeah. Anyway, Robert McMillan, that's the name on this story. Robert, we are thinking about you today, sir. Hope you're doing well. Hope your retirement fund is great.
My first reaction to hearing this story is, hey, that sucks for Robert, but that's 13 Bitcoin that was burned and essentially reduces the supply a little bit. So
yes,
that's right. Good for us Bitcoin holders.
Yeah, I've heard a number of different statistics about the number of Bitcoin that's theoretically lost forever. Like people have either died without properly making plans for what happens after that, or they've lost. There's a number of famous stories about, I had my keys on this laptop, and that laptop is now in a junkyard, and I'm combing through this junkyard to find a laptop that contains data that's worth millions of dollars. Not the most flattering position to be in, but you'd probably do the same if you knew you had a laptop that had info like that on it. Anyway, I think we should try to get Robert as a guest on the podcast. I think that'd be pretty cool. Let's see what he's up to today. It looks like he stopped writing for Wired in 2015. Robert, I'm going to track you down as soon as we're done here. So speaking of other, less than completely positive stories about finance, Bill, we got to talk about Turkey, because it seems like this country it was already a precarious situation regarding the Turkish lira against the US dollar. And now it seems like it's gone from the frying pan into the fire a little bit. Can you help us unpack what's going on with currency devaluation in Turkey right now?
Sure. So in Turkey, you've got a volatile leader terms of his personality. And now you have a volatile foreign exchange market. Especially in the world of the virus where economic growth can fluctuate. Turkey has a GDP of about, 720, I want to say billion. Okay. So it's not a small entity, but currency devaluation can be contagious, right? If you have a currency devaluation in one country in the emerging market, that can sometimes spill over. All right. So Turkey's tried to contain this problem and they haven't been able to. So when everyone has a problem, who do they call? Well, the problem is with the relationship between the Turkish lira and the dollar. So if the Turkish central bank can't handle it, who are they going to call? They're going to call the Fed, right? So the good news is for crypto is that if the Fed is occupied with helping Turkey get the lira under control, they're not going to be interfering in crypto anytime soon. And then there's the obvious point that, if we have a debacle in fiat every once in a while, that helps the case for crypto. I mean, Turkey is a NATO country, right? So who would have ever thought that, El Salvador with Bitcoin would wind up more financially stable than a NATO country?
Yeah, I don't want to sound too snarky, but regarding Turkey, like cryptocurrency fixes this, Bitcoin theoretically fixes this. We're just beginning to collect proof points, and it kind of starts with El Salvador, perhaps. Not to suggest that you need to go so far as to make it legal currency within the country, but you could certainly borrow the methodology and make it normal versus making it the law, perhaps.
Right. I'm sure Turkish citizens are way ahead of the curve in terms of going, I'm not dealing with this. I'm getting involved in crypto. So.
Yeah. Hey, Jacob, let's talk a little bit about Ross Ulbricht's NFT drop. That's right. The founder of Silk Road, who is currently serving a life sentence in federal prison, has issued NFTs of his own artwork. Is that right, Jacob?
Yes, correct.
What else do we need to know about this? I mean, I follow Ross on Twitter, which really means I'm reading tweets that his mother tweets because he writes them to her and puts it in the mail. That's how he tweets. Kind of a sad story, in my opinion, but can't help but pay attention to it. Anyway, what's the latest with NFTs by Ross Ulbricht?
Yeah, so he plans to auction the Ross Ulbricht Genesis collection on Super Rare, the NFT marketplace, from December 2nd to December 8th. And this collection consists of 11 works of art that he handmade from childhood. I think he was the first one was he was 3 years old up to when he was in prison, and they're actually really good. It seems like he has kind of a separate background, not just in programming, but in art a little bit. And so these physical artworks can be minted after his supporters or investors want to auction on them, and if they win the auction, they get the art in NFT form, and proceeds from the auction will help fund the trust that supports Ulbricht's efforts to be freed from prison. And the other half, or I don't know exactly the split, but another portion of the funds will help launch a donor-advised charitable fund called Art for Giving, with the number 4, which is dedicated to relieving the suffering of the incarcerated and their families. I was reading Ross's Medium page, and it seemed, and he was saying that the worst part of prison is how it affects children of the incarcerated, how it affects their families, because he says since he's been in prison for 9 years, he's seen over the years children in their visitations, just how broken and upset the children are. So he wants to put a portion of the funds from the NFT collection to help these children of the incarcerated, help their families.
Yeah. There's not a lot of happiness to be found when you're serving a federal a life sentence in federal prison. But as we for whatever reason, I've really gravitated to his story because it's just kind of a remarkable story, to be honest with you. the very, very successful venture capitalist named Tim Draper is probably the most vocal proponent of getting Ross out of prison. And I'd like to think that that wave can start to rise a little bit. I remember some Twitter goober that I follow in crypto, and he was just saying, "Hey, what if whenever someone in the crypto world was giving a very public-facing media appearance, they were like calling out Free Ross, like, I'm so and so from this crypto project, Free Ross. Let's talk about my project." Make it kind of a rallying cry versus, it's so easy to get reductive about, Bitcoin to the moon, etc. We kind of forget about some of these people that are involved along the way. And Ross is certainly one of those people. He just happens to be in prison right now. I want to read a couple of his tweets because these are, it's good context. November 25th. Let's just spend today being grateful for everything. Ross tweets from prison, writes to his mother, and she tweets it. Prison is a long, hard road. There's no way I can thank enough those who have stuck by me. My mom, dad, my sister, my angel, and a crew of solid friends and family. A journey like this lets you know who is real. It just seems like he's certainly in prison, but he's at the same time, he's making plans for a hypothetical life after prison. And I think the only way that happens at this point is a presidential pardon, to be real with you.
Well, because he's
so what is it? What is a presidential pardon?
Sentences.
Say it again.
He's serving 2 life sentences, so with no chance.
Yeah. That's out. I think at this point it's like the president has to say you are excused. Yeah. And that's interesting to me because that kind of makes it a publicity game. How much attention can the crypto community put on Ross's case? And immediately adjacent to that is how much empathy can they send his direction to the point that it becomes an unignorable political issue? We have a very intelligent person who did something very, very illegal. And I don't know. I've got too many feelings on this. It seems like we don't need to harp on too much longer about this. But if anybody doesn't know,
2 things I thought of.
Hit it, Bill. Hit it.
Well, first of all, it kind of sounds like Ross is really trying to help his mom, right? In other words, if you made a mistake and, your mom was so brokenhearted that she devoted the rest of her life to helping you, she probably needs some form of economic assistance because, parents, that's what they do for their children. And then, of course, there's the motto that my father used to have, and always a good reminder, particularly in the crypto world, is that your whole life can change in a split second, right? You can make 1 or 2 decisions and, so always check yourself out there in crypto world before you think or do things that, could get you in trouble or result in losses. It's kind of a tangential way to look at it, but your whole life really can change in a split second.
Yeah. And to be clear, Ross's NFT auction is specifically about raising money to help him get out of prison. And I'm sure that, what does that mean in practical terms? I'm sure it's also about helping his mom, pay for necessities along that route.
Right. And
let's turn the page on this, but I want to read one more tweet from Ross. He says, decades of incarceration stretch out in front of me. As I face the future, my eventual old age and death in this cage, I find myself looking for meaning and purpose. What good can I do with the time I have left? I hope that helping my fellow prisoners through my art is one way. What if everybody in crypto is talking this way? End of thought. Now let's talk about Fidelity in Canada.
Nice transition.
Yeah. Jump cut right there. Jacob, why don't you take us on this one? Fidelity is launching a spot Bitcoin ETF in Canada, specifically because they don't want to wait on the SEC in the US.
Yeah, exactly. So the SEC has still continued their ban or non-approval of spot Bitcoin ETFs, which means that the ETFs or funds will buy actual Bitcoin rather than holding it through derivative instruments like futures, which current Bitcoin future ETFs do exist in the US, but not spot ETFs. So Fidelity, which is one of America's largest asset managers with over 4 trillion assets under management, they were kind of forced to create this product in Canada to meet their clients' demands, because at the same time, the SEC isn't approving spot Bitcoin ETFs. And I think this is only going to further drive the fire of kind of forcing the United States into folding their hand and approving spot Bitcoin ETFs. Because if all this monetary drive and this technological drive and innovation is going to other countries, that's definitely going to cause the United States to rethink their decision and say, hey, maybe we should approve these spot Bitcoin ETFs. But at the same time, the US loves their regulations and definitely is going to want to have clear regulations on crypto in general and these spot Bitcoin or spot Ethereum ETFs before they approve them.
Well, we also know, we only have to look at recent history to see that a number of crypto companies seeking to go public will do so through the Canadian markets because they get to sidestep all this weird gray area. Bill, you were talking about Galaxy, and which is, you know, mostly Americans who have who've taken their company public through a Canadian entity. But also, there's a very vibrant crypto community within Canada. I remember interviewing Andrew Kegel. He's the CEO of Tokens.com, which is a publicly traded company on the Canadian market. Is it fair to say that the U.S. has to keep up with Canada in terms of regulations?
Okay, so that's a good question. I think it's, the Canadians have the ability to sort of outpace us in certain things. And I think that they enjoy that and they're going to continue to do it. Fidelity, I can remember distinctly from a Financial Times article that I can like close and see in my mind's eye, was mining Bitcoin in 2015 and accepted it in their lunchroom at one point.
Wow.
At least according to that news article. So as long as the SEC doesn't come out and say Americans are not allowed to hold a spot Bitcoin ETF, then American investors can open an account to trade international equities. You can trade equities out of Europe or Hong Kong in a brokerage account with an American brokerage company. So if people really want the spot Bitcoin ETF, or if investors want to vote with their feet, Fidelity's like, hey, they've got they still got storefront brokerage houses, storefront places where you can walk in and go, hey, have you got the spot Bitcoin ETF? So, how do American brokerage firms compete with each other when the equity market is just kind of like plain vanilla thing that kind of goes up every day? How does one brokerage firm distinguish itself from another? Well, Fidelity can go, hey, come on in. We got our own spot Bitcoin ETF. Just open an international account and check us out. We're now exciting.
Could you imagine the blowback if U.S. regulators issued some kind of China flavored announcement that, no, sorry, crypto just isn't going to be a thing in the U.S.? I don't think that's at any chance of happening. I'm just imagining all the certain people on Twitter that I follow would freak out. Chris Black, I'm looking at you fundamentalist.
Yeah, you probably couldn't get you couldn't get a plane ticket out of the country in some cases.
Yeah, I think we'd have warning signs in advance. I think a few other big things would happen before any kind of dictum like that was issued.
Yeah, you got to remember, folks, with things like Omicron and some of the things that are going on like the Polish, Russian, Belarus border, you know what? I know governments always talk about not liking crypto and they can issue statements, but realistically, governments have much bigger problems.
Yeah. Well, we'll be there to track these problems, especially how crypto can solve them. Guys, the name of this podcast is Engine Room. We're here 3 days a week for you. This has been the Wednesday edition of our group chat here, Bill and Jacob, as always. You should subscribe to Token Metrics on YouTube. We just crossed 100,000 subscribers. We're pretty pumped about that. 1 million right around the corner.
That's right.
Give this video a like. Tell somebody about the podcast. Do be sure to subscribe to us in your favorite audio podcast platform, and we'll see you next time.